Hello everyone, Madmandoc here with the next in my series of Gemp SWCCG gameplay videos. Today we have a classic confrontation. It is my hidden base versus hunt down and destroy the Jedi. So the starting cards are coming out. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the start for this game. Now, first a couple quick words about hunt down and destroy the Jedi. This is an extremely popular deck. It's very powerful. It's very efficient, and it's always going to be one of the top decks in pretty much any format and any meta where it's available. When you're making a light side deck, if you're intending to play to win, you really need to keep this deck in mind, because any serious opponents who are looking to play the best deck they can find will likely turn up with this deck, or at least you're going to see it quite frequently. Now, I should point out that here on Gemp, I've kind of taken to not really wanting to play against Hunt Down and Destroy the Jedi. That's not because it's so good that it can't be beaten. I think I win the matchup maybe 60 to 65% of the time. But I've been playing SWCCG a long time, and this deck has been around a long time, and it doesn't change very much. The way the game plays out doesn't change much. The cards in the Hunt Down deck are much the same from one deck to another. You don't get a lot of variability, and I've played it literally hundreds of times. So a lot of times if I'm playing against a opponent I'm familiar with and they turn up with Hunt Down and Destroy the Jedi, I may just concede the game because I don't find it a good use of 30 minutes. But this is a special case because I'm playing against a player I've not played before, and I would consider it pretty rude to play against a new player I've never played before and then refuse to play the first deck they played against me. So I'm going to give it a go here. And you can see the starting sites have come out. Like I said, everybody knows this. And we'll go to the starting effects. Now on the dark side, he plays Imperial Arrest of Plans, Crush the Rebellion, and You Cannot Hide Forever / mobilization points. That's pretty standard for Hunt Down. You occasionally see some variation in the third effect depending on exactly what their priorities are, but you almost always will see the Imperial Arrest Order, Secret Plans, and Crush the Rebellion. Now, here in my light side deck, I have decided to start with Insurrection and Aim High and Strike Planning. Those I will almost always start with because I need them to get my force generation going, and because I don't like to give away the 2 force at the Endor system to the opponent, so I need to play Strike Planning to prevent that. The third effect I tend to vary quite a bit depending on the matchup. In this case, I decided to play Battle Plan and Draw Their Fire. If I'm playing against a deck that will be draining very quickly in the game, very early in the game, I'll almost always start with this. My deck needs a couple turns to get its activation going. It requires some combo base type of plays to play well against Hunt Down, and I don't want him to drop a Vader and Saber on the second turn and start draining me for free right away. I need him to at least pay for that drain if I'm going to be taking that force loss. So I play the Battle Plan. Now, in my deck, what I'm doing here is I'm not planning to flip the hidden base. I'm using it for force activation, and I'm going to try to basically get control of the board and battle for control of all of the battleground locations in this game. Hidden base is pretty versatile, so I know my opponent doesn't know for sure exactly what I'm planning. But I do have a strong space package, I have a strong ground complement, I have a lot of things I can do against Hunt Down and Destroy the Jedi, and you can see my opening hand is a pretty good one overall. Most notably, I have this Out of Commission and Transmission Terminated, which is a key card against Hunt Down because I can cancel that Visage right off the top, and later I'm going to try and use Out of Commission to ideally put Vader or Vader's lightsaber out of commission. If I can do that, his deck will be far, far less potent, and in some cases, if you get Vader, their deck becomes completely ineffective, but it just depends on exactly how they constructed it. So my opponent starts off by activating his 4 force. He plays a docking bay. This is pretty standard. And he gets out Bad Feeling. That's a good draw for him, and will hurt me quite a bit because I do have a lot of characters that are going to be affected by that, and it's going to augment one of the weaknesses in my deck, which is that it can be a little bit slow in the first couple turns. I wait until he gets to his move phase, and then I use my out of commission transmission terminated to eliminate Visage. I just don't want him to deploy a new one right away if he happens to have one in his hand. Some people will do that. And he decides to leave 3 Force, which tells me that he's probably sitting waiting to deploy a Vader on the next turn. I use my hidden base to deploy the indoor system and my insurrection to deploy a docking bay. And I get out my Insight Serves You Well in staging areas. That card is very versatile, does a whole lot of good things, and in this deck it's going to be quite helpful for several reasons, but most notably it will reduce the defense value of Vader and the Emperor by 1. That doesn't really sound like much, but it makes a very big difference when it comes to weapons fire later and Fallen Portal. Now I make a play that I like to make against Hunt Down. I luckily drew my Unita, and I'm able to play it and use it to grab back that out of commission transmission terminated that I just used. Now if he plays another Visage, I'll be able to cancel it again, and if a Vader gets in the lost pile, I'm sitting here waiting to put it out of commission. Draw a couple cards, and I get a Han, which is obviously super good. Now he does what I was expecting him to do, given that he saved Force. He deploys Vader down to a docking bay. He also brings Ozzel for presumably a little bit of protection, and he puts a Dark Jedi lightsaber on Vader. Now that's going to give him a good drain of 2. The Dark Jedi lightsaber obviously is not nearly so threatening as Vader's lightsaber, but for the purpose of the drain, they're identical. And he leaves 1 Force. That means he may be able to barrier me if I were to deploy. Now I proceed with my development, getting out the Clackdoor system and another docking bay for activation and to get a 0 out of my deck. Now I had to make a pretty big decision here, and I pondered this for at least a minute and a half, exactly what to do on this turn. As you can see from my hand, I have Captain Han and the Falcon, and I also had a Leia and a Warrior's Courage. Now that gives me a couple options. I can either start with deploying to space by putting Captain Han the Falcon at the rendezvous point and moving it to Endor. That's typically the way I like to open up with this deck, because I'm going to try and use Battle Plan against them later, and I need to get control of that Endor system. But with Hunt Down, you have to remember that you have a problem with Leia, and that problem is that you're not going to be able to drain at Leia's location if their objective is flipped. The objective prevents that. So that changes my space plan a little bit. Now, obviously, I would typically want to get Captain Han and the Falcon with Leia as the second pilot to get the 3 Destiny, which is about as good as it gets in the space for the light side. But in this case, I don't really want to do that, because if I put Leia on the Falcon, I can end up having it parked at Endor, unable to drain. So I decided to take a little bit of a risk here, and I put Leia down at the docking bay. I do have a barrier, which is super helpful, because if Tarkin comes down or some other large character like Jizor or something like that, I can prevent that character from battling me. And of course the Warrior's Courage allows me to draw 3 Battle Destinies, which shot at taking out Vader if he decides to battle me, which he probably will. Now I leave the 1 Force. Now a couple things I'm thinking about here. He could have senses in the deck, which would be pretty devastating, but I'm willing to just gamble that that's not the case for now. Some people play that, but that's not common. Maybe 1 in 5 Hunt-Down decks will use Sense and Alter. Instead, he does what I was anticipating a little bit. He plays a Tarkin down, and Tarkin gets barriered. And then Danik Jericho comes down. That's a bit of a surprise. I don't much like that, but at least Danik Jericho doesn't have much forfeit. The key here is going to be to try and shoot Ozzel to neutralize his 5 forfeit, and then play this Warrior's Courage to get enough attrition to clear this site. Now my deck is pretty high destiny overall, especially once I get all the locations out. I don't have every location out, but I have most of them out already. So I'm hoping to get at least 5 on the Battle Destiny draw, which will be pretty easy. And if I can get 9, I'll completely clear the site, which would be ideal. He swings the lightsaber at Leia and hits. That's not really of much consequence since it's just the Dark Jedi lightsaber, and Leia was sure to be lost from this battle anyway. I fire at Ozzel, and luckily I make the hit there. He plays I Have You Now, and I play Warrior's Courage. So a lot of carnage in this battle. Luckily he hits at least 1 low destiny, so I'm not likely to get a lot of battle damage. And after hitting a 1 on the first one and causing a little anxiety, I do hit 2 decent Battle Destiny draws, giving me 9 attrition, which is enough to clear the site. Now Danik Jericho does put Leia out of... Obviously, I'd rather that not happen, but Leia's not a reliable character to use against Hunt-Down anyway, so it's just a small loss. Now I activate my 9 force, and as you can see, Tarkin is now just standing there by himself, since he got buried and was not in that battle. Of course, I'm going to take the opportunity to use Corran Horn to eliminate Tarkin, but first I have to decide what I'm going to do with my out of commission. There's a Vader in the Lost Pile, there's 7 cards in the Lost Pile, and I'm trying to decide whether to play it now and take the 1 in 7 shot at hitting Vader, or kill Tarkin and then take a 2 in 8 shot of hitting Vader or Tarkin. And I decide to wait and get Tarkin in that Lost Pile as well. Continuing with my development, out comes the system and the last docking bay. There's 1 0 destiny in the deck. I have to really hope I don't hit that, which would be pretty devastating if it happened, but obviously the chances are slim, and it does not happen. So Tarkin goes to the Lost Pile, and I play the out of commission, and I get Admiral Ozzel, which not a good result, but it was maybe a 1 in 4 chance of hitting Vader or Tarkin, so most of the time I'm not going to hit huge there. I do have 4 copies of Out of Commission and Transmission Terminated in this deck, and what I'm now going to do is I'm going to try and draw into some of those and take some more shots at that Lost Pile. I can see he only has 3 cards in hand. One of them is the Executor, which he pulled with... or no, did he pull that? Yeah, he pulled that with mobilization points. So he probably does not have a Vader in his hand. He might, but there's a good chance he doesn't, which means I'm safe on the ground for a couple of turns. I draw a few cards, and I leave 1 for that barrier that I luckily drew. Now he searches for a docking bay, but does not find one. That gives me a look at his deck, and I can see that it's a pretty typical kind of Hunt-Down deck. There's no senses or alters in it, which is a relief. He does have a few unusual type of ships in it, so I have to be a little careful with my space game that I don't get surprised by any ships I didn't expect to be seeing. Now here I go to check to deploy a system but don't find one. I did notice that there was one copy of out of commission and transmission terminated in my force pile, and I'm going to use tunnel vision to go get it and play it, take another shot at hitting Vader or Tarkin, and I got Tarkin. So obviously that's good. He did save 8 force in the last turn, which means that he's planning to either deploy Vader and a Walker, or more likely he's planning to deploy the Executor. Since he has such a small hand size, it would be a little surprising if he just happened to have Vader and Blizzard 2 or something like that as the only 2 unaccounted for cards. But I deploy Luke down here to reinforce this docking bay and draw a couple cards. He brings the Executor to Endor. Now, obviously that's a big ship, but I'm not bothered by that very much because that cost him 15 force to do, and he's only trading for 1. So that's a reasonable trade-off as far as I'm concerned. He used up almost all the available force he has that turn, and his hand size is only 2, which means that his options are going to be limited for another turn. And I'm activating better now that I've gotten almost all of my locations out, and I'm activating for docking bay. I get my last system out, and I decide to deploy Han on the Falcon at the Endor docking, and I'll have Cornhorn get in there and take off. I also happen to have the Bantha droid. In case he plays lateral damage, I'll be safe. And I take off up here to the system. Now, I don't mind going against the Executor here because he only has a couple cards in hand, and if he plays another ship, that's fine. He'll lose that ship to attrition in all likelihood, and he'll again be stuck with very few cards in hand. So I'm not too worried about standing across from the Executor right now. He decides to put out some more docking bays. Looks like that's what was in his hand. And he does battle at the Endor system. He had deployed General Veers to get enough ability to draw Battle Destiny. I decided not to barrier General Veers and instead keep the 2 force so that if he happened to draw high, I could make him redraw the Battle Destiny draw. But luckily he only drew a 1. I get to draw my 2 Battle Destiny, and I hit a good solid 5, which kept my power up high enough to make him lose a force, and then he decided to run away. Now, I kind of understand why he did that, because I have a lot of force coming, and I have extra Battle Destiny, and there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to hit the Executor for some battle damage or for the loss of General Veers if he stays there. But he decided to move to Clackdor, which is really kind of perfect for me. That's not a battleground system. It's only a drain of 1. He's going to have to pay force to drain there, at least for now. And he's used up his biggest ship. I'm certainly not going to worry about that drain of 1 at Clackdor. Instead, I'll hold Endor, use it to fulfill battle plan, and continue to get more and more established in this game. I get a couple drains in here. Play the tunnel vision. And I take Gunite. This lets me to continue to leverage my force advantage by making him pay extra to deploy Vader, Jizor, the Emperor. And I draw some cards. I had seen when I was looking with my tunnel vision that I had some copies of Out of Commission, Transmission Terminated in the force pile. And I'm digging for those here because I want to take more shots at getting Vader. And I did draw 2 copies of it, and I played them, and I did not hit Vader. But he's still in that lost pile, and we're still going to be taking shots at him. He deploys some extra forfeit onto the executor and draws a couple cards. I activate 15 force, get my drains in, and I take the opportunity to deploy all over the place. I put Oromarco at the generic docking bay, Obi-Wan at the Tatooine docking bay. I put out order to engage. If he deploys to one of those docking bays and then gets barriered, he's going to lose 3 for order to engage. I also have these fallen portals to use for defense if he comes down. And he deploys Gizor there at the spaceport docking bay. Battles. I play Fallen Portal and I hit Gizor. Now, Gizor is a little bit of Fallen Portal bait. I can't even tell you how many times he's gotten hit with that card due to his low ability. And what happened there was, again, another large swing in force generation. He played a Gizor for 4, but that cost him 6 because of Goonie Tay, and then it actually cost him 7 because he played it to the spaceport docking bay. He battled, which meant he... and then I played Fallen Portal, which killed Gizor. So he just spent 8 of his force, which is the bulk of what he has available for one turn, and the board looks exactly like it did before he did that. He draws a couple cards, and I make a pretty big activation. I know that I have that 5 I just drew for Fallen Portal on the bottom of the deck, so I'm keeping that in mind. And I ping off a whole bunch of drains here. Now, to enhance the pressure, I decide I'm going to go on over to Clackdoor and see if I can get him to deploy more guys onto the Executor. I know that 5 is the second Battle Destiny draw, so I've got quite a bit of power back up in the event that he gets more pilots or more ships against the Falcon. And I'm able to get Wedge on Gold Leader and Gold 1 over to Endor, so I don't lose my system coverage for the purposes of battle plan. Now he plays a Vader onto the Executor, which is obviously good for me. That's not where Vader's at his best. And he apparently forgets about the Bantha droid and deploys lateral damage onto the Falcon. I wait until he initiates the battle, and then I cancel lateral damage with the Bantha droid. At this point, he decides to concede. Now, I think that's probably reasonable. I have very good control of the board here, and what's going to happen next, if he had not conceded, is that I will draw 2 Battle Destiny. The second one will be a 5, so I'll have a decent amount of power. He may or may not take battle damage depending on how well he draws, but if he draws very high, I'm going to make him redraw it with Captain Han. So some of the odds are in my favor. And then if things went badly, I could be forced to forfeit Corran Horn from the Falcon, although most likely I won't lose anything from the location. If I did lose Corran Horn, I have another one in my hand, and he can come back to the Falcon, or he can attack one of the Executor locations to enhance the drain over there. In any case, on the next turn, the Falcon would move back to Endor, leaving the Executor at Clackdoor again, and then he's got a difficult choice of whether to follow me over to Endor, where he's facing even more power thanks to Gold Leader and Gold 1 with Wedge on it, or to just stay there and spend 3/4 a turn draining for 2 at Clactor. I have 3 docking bays under pretty strong control. If he tries to come down there, he's going to get barriered and lose for order to engage. If he manages to get an attack through at a docking bay, he's going to get hit with Fallen Portal. With my activation being so high, it's very likely I can keep a 5 on the top of the deck, now that I know where at least one of them is. Also, if I should play a Rebel Barrier, I can track that through, and since I have Your Insight serves you well and Staging Areas out, which reduces Vader's forfeit, a 4 would allow Fallen Portal to kill Vader. So I can use Rebel Barriers as tracked 4s to drop a door on Vader if he manages to come down again. So the net effect of that is that he's not going to be able to keep a Vader at a battleground in this game, at least not a ground battleground. He might be able to keep him at Clactor, and that's going to be a winning combination for me. So that's been a game against Hunt Down. Interestingly, almost every Hunt Down deck plays out a little bit like this. If it's going well for me, it does. If I'm losing, what happens is Vader gets a stranglehold on some location and from the turn 2 and starts beating me up and draining like crazy, and I quickly lose. That can happen. It does 40% of the time or so. Maybe more against some types of decks that have a few more tricks that eliminate my some of my ways to kill Vader. But yeah, so that's Hunt Down versus Hidden Base. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. Certainly you'll be seeing Hunt Down decks quite frequently. And that's it. All right, Madmandoc out. Till next time, thank you for watching.